This is Spiritual Souls Sliding Sideways, Chapter 8, Winning is Complicated. I keep fighting, I keep trying. The odds are unseen. My spiritual God guides me. Spiritual warfare is what happens in my mind every day. There is the constant struggle of energy balance. The many vibes that exist all around me change me in many ways. My energy alone is balanced and exudes confidence. My interactions with others and their energy affect me in many ways. I sometimes have a feeling to connect for understanding. I sometimes want to connect for experience. The desire to connect can be selfish. The desire to connect can be caring. Spiritual warfare isn't only about facing evil, it's about how I connect with people. Spiritual warfare happens when we connect or have a desire to connect. Spiritual warfare is when something or someone becomes a controlling factor over us. Spiritual warfare is the complication of when people's energies conflict and connect. I look for peace in the chaos. My discomfort with so many different vibes cause my lack of stability. It's hard to be in a spiritual warfare when all I want is less conflict. I struggle with any kind of battle. I struggle with spiritual destruction. When we go to war, we risk losing everything we value. Spiritual warfare is a battle of our will and control. The human need to be in control and gain power is a motivation for having spiritual warfare. What we are looking for when we have spiritual warfare. What makes spiritual warfare worth it? Why do we have any desire to win anything? We are born with a desire to dominate and control. We are looking for a sense of control and power during spiritual war. Spiritual warfare is worth it because of our desire to win. The desire to win at anything drives our need to fit in and be accepted. People fight wars over beliefs and justifications for what they think and need. We go to war when we find how it can complement us. We war to be in the lead. The pursuit of power and control can stem from a profound desire and passion. When we want to be on top, we usually go to war. We fight against each other for domination on earth. We fight the spiritual world for spiritual power. The war on earth and the spiritual war creates many vibes. Each battle evokes many negative and positive vibes. I have never found a need to go to war for dominant gain. I do not agree with spiritual war. War is necessary. Spiritual and earthly people often perceive good and evil differently. The earthly and spiritual wars are sometimes limited in their scope. Spiritual war some days is completely confusing. Spiritual warfare seems to exist for those who cannot be content. When we are content, then there is nothing to fight over. What does it take to stay on top? How many battles does it take before we can enjoy the win? I know from personal experience that there will always be someone who wants more. When someone wants more, we must choose to flee or fight. Whether we want spiritual warfare or not, it seems we cannot stop others from choosing it. I want to exist with a feeling of peace. I never wanted to destroy my spiritual connection. What we sacrifice and what we gain during war is a high risk. The people and the spiritual forces sometimes give us little choice but to fight. We can run away from a fight. When should we turn around and fight? Unity takes away the need for war. The problem is when people do not trust in unity. The problem is when someone or something is always trying to stay on top. It can be hard to trust that unity exists. We often live long enough, we do not believe peace is possible. Doubt and a lack of trust can make us believe war will never end. Many things can force us into war. Sometimes the spiritual war we suffer from is dealing with human power struggles. Humans are born with a need for power over one another. A person may be trying to fill their emptiness by going to war. Seeing the world around us can lead us to believe people want conflict all the time. The more the war surrounds us, the more it jades us. When we are stuck in war, we lose our belief in anything better. When we lose sight of peace, then all we have left is the bath of chaos. How long can we live in chaos? How long can we survive any hostile environment? We can live in chaos and a hostile environment our whole lives. We may never adjust to chaos. When we choose spiritual war, it would always be a losing situation. We lose when we win because we will always be looking over our shoulder. When we lose, we suffer from low self-confidence and depression. We all matter, and to disregard that is like wishing for chaos all the time. I have won spiritual battles. I have lost spiritual battles. I have learned manipulation, control, and what real power is. I understand my driving force for war was being afraid and losing. We may believe in spiritual warfare when we fight fire with fire. When we choose spiritual warfare, we will always have stress. Stress comes with always feeling the need to defend ourselves. When we take on spiritual warfare, we take on a personal, never-ending war. The exhaustion that comes with spiritual warfare is intense and depleting. The more we fight, the more drained we become. Spiritual warfare can, even when it is for good, can lead to spiritual darkness. What energy do we have to keep fighting, even when we win? Peace and unity are what help us connect to our core and become energized. Spiritual warfare, for good or evil, is still the road to a spiritual blackout. Every battle we fight is spiritual, and we can lose ourselves in that spiritual war. We may not remember what we are fighting for the more we fight. Every battle sucks us into a need for more power and control. Every battle is a need to win or preserve what we have won. We can only have so much control and power before we become what we are fighting against. We can choose the battle for the right reasons. Over time, we may justify our choices for war even when our choices are evil. We can start out fighting for good. We can become the evil good needs to fight against. War of any sort changes how we think. We can become over-justified in how we act. We can condemn others for acting the way we act. The consequences of war depends on how much we have changed with each battle. We can believe we are fighting for good, but we are only fighting for self-gain. We may have crossed a line we choose not to see. We must stay aware of how war changes us when doing battle. Spiritual warfare has many different impacts on our lives and in the world. When we lose ourselves in the battle, the belief systems that we gain can become tainted. When we gain a tainted belief system from doing battle, we risk only changing for the worst. When we go dark because of war, it can be hard to be humble. When we are not humble while doing battle, then we get lost in the worship of our belief systems. When we believe in the worship of our belief systems, then we worship ourselves. When we worship ourselves more than anything, we make ourselves a god. What we worship and believe in has an amazing impact on our choices. Our choices when we have spiritual warfare can tear us apart. Warfare requires a good or evil belief. Whether good or evil belief, someone usually gets hurt. The justification for war can desensitize us. We can justify causing pain. What amount of pain caused to someone is acceptable? Does our need to win make all we do good? What reasons justify war as good or bad? When we go into battle, we need to be aware of how lost we can become. War requires sacrifice across mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical dimensions. War can make the lines between good and evil blurry. Justifying war can give us apathetic reasoning. War can affect us, and we become a mixture of good and evil. We may make a choice for good, and it is good. We can make a choice for good, and it is evil. We may confuse what is good and what is evil. We could make a list of what we think is good and never see what is evil in the list. What happens when war taints us all? Then who is fighting for good? What happens when we all become deluded by our choices? We can all believe we are good, but in truth, we are evil battling evil. Evil against evil is a place where order and peace no longer exist. Good is when we try to have peace. War is necessary only when we are defending good, not what we believe is good. What is good is peace. We can decide what is good by connecting to our core. Reasoning is good when we can understand and connect with what is good. What is good? Good is when we fight for peace and not for selfish gain. When we lose sight of God and our core, our self-reasoning for war becomes what we want it to be. The need for power and control are true reasons we go to war. What makes us less content? What makes us less satisfied? Was war a way to feel more spiritual? Has the need for more always been a glitch in the system since the beginning of time? What if there never was a need for more? What would existence look like without need? When we received free will, need became choices. Choices transformed into a chaotic state of constant organization. Is free will a motivation for war? We are given a choice, and we usually choose what we believe. We usually believe what we are taught. Our core may have little to do with what we are taught. Whether we are in the human state or a spiritual state, circumstances can persuade us to be selfish. When we think about ourselves is when our purpose is self-motivated. When we are self-motivated, we stop caring about peace. When we stop caring about peace, we fail to understand the need for peace. When we fail to understand the need for peace, we lose sight of the fact that everything matters. When we lose sight of the fact that everything matters, we go to war for selfish reasons. When selfishness persuades us, we experience a decline in our spiritual well-being. The spiritual fall we have can convince us that free will is a trap. We can believe free will is a trap of human happiness. We can choose to focus on our own happiness. We can use free will so all can be happy. When we stop helping each other, we choose selfishness. We can be alone when we need help because of how selfish we are. When people fight spiritual wars for selfish reasons, it becomes selfish. One can choose spiritual war for selfish reasons. When we focus on war, we usually think of better ways to be better at it. War usually involves mass manipulation and emotional numbness, our wisdom and light. When we can't numb our feelings or explain why we go to war, we may feel mentally and emotionally unstable. The effects of war on us can severely impair our stability to function in a socially normal way. We can get so mixed up from war because of how it can create many conflicting thoughts and emotions. When we are in self-conflict, we can find it harder to make choices and become more confused. War can put confidence through a meat grinder. We can lose sight of how to live and function in war. We can lose ourselves so much in war that we cannot focus on holding our lives together. Our belief systems can become watered down. We can lose that deep emotional and mental connection between right and wrong in war. We need to decide what is important and what is not. Rules can change while we are at war. Rules do not apply to all situations. All situations can vary by many degrees. When should rules apply? We can feel confused when our spiritual rules for war fail. The mind depends on consistency. When we do not have consistency, we become confused. We become confused when our consistency is not acceptable. We based what is acceptable on what we believe. What we believe comes from what we have learned. We can learn that something is bad and someone can tell us it is good. What we are told can mess with our mentality. Spiritual warfare can be confusing. Everyone has their own idea of what is spiritually right. We can lessen our confusion when we understand when choices serve the greater good. We can understand what is better for the greater good from our core. Our core connects to God. God understands what is best for our greater good. We may feel confused about our choices until we gain clarity on what benefits us. Spiritual warfare is the basis for what is right and wrong. Each side decides what the greater good is. Evil is serving the greater selfishness, and good is serving peace. When we are going to war, we should understand what side we are choosing. We can choose peace for our benefit alone, and that is still selfish. Spiritual warfare is a war of selfishness fighting against selfishness. Is selfishness ever acceptable? Is selfishness ever justifiable? Can being selfish ever serve a greater good? We are often selfish here on earth, and the battle we are fighting is inside. The spiritual warfare within can be the greatest battle of all. Our personal spiritual battle is having a need to be selfish and fighting to care. Being human and having human unmet needs can make it easy to be selfish. The dark tunnel of selfishness is an infinite well that deepens the darkness in our souls. When we add layers of darkness, we can find it hard to fight for what is right on the inside. We all are needy in some way for someone or something. When our need turns into selfishness, the war inside becomes a battle for stability. The more selfish we become, the less stable we are. The instability we feel creates darkness inside us. The darkness can keep us from finding spiritual direction. When we lose spiritual direction, the spirit panics. When the spirit panics, the mind panics too. When the mind panics, we suffer emotional confusion. When we suffer emotional confusion, we feel disconnected. When we feel disconnected, we have more panic and anxiety. We can end up in the downward spiral of spiritual suffering. War is an abyss of greater confusion and self-loss. When we lose ourselves, we also lose our ability to fight for good or evil. We must understand how everything connects. We must understand that cause and effect are outside of our control. We need to realize the impact of what spiritual war can do to us even when we fight for good. Universal understanding is the only way to do checks and balances. Without universal understanding of cause and effect, we can go crazy and stay that way. We can climb high, and we can try not to be affected. We will always be affected by what has happened to us at some level. Without understanding universal peace and the necessity for it, we have doubt. We can try to overcome doubt by connecting to cosmic peace, God. The truth will set us free when we gain the truth. The truth is universal understanding. Universal understanding is how life can be, for better or worse. We can make many choices without caring about the impact they could have on us or others. When negative circumstances affect us, we can feel that there is no hope and no way to cope. Coping is when we find our personal lullaby. The greatest lullaby in all existence is universal understanding. Universal understanding is what all possibilities are. When is war necessary? Will we agree with war? Even when we have universal understanding, is the greater good always good? We can own universal knowledge and have universal wisdom. With free will, we can't believe that universal answers are what we think they are already. We should always question what we believe is true. We are human, and there is always room for improvement. We should always recreate what our foundation is before we build our house on it. Keeping an open mind can help us change when we need to. Change requires that we may have been wrong about some or all that we know. When we choose, we need to have spiritual warfare. We should always be adaptive to what is better. We can be stuck on what we believe is better. We can choose one size that fits all. We can lose sight of how much better it can be. There are infinite ways for life to be better for any given situation. We should always be open instead of stuck to the idea that we believe is the only way. The world would not be what it is if we were stuck plowing a field with a horse. We must see our minds like different periods in history. Through time, we have advanced in different ways. The mind can advance and keep advancing. We can create strict rules for how we need to do things and stay stuck. We can be strict about how we should live life and never change. When we are too strict, we can hinder ourselves. We hold ourselves back when we refuse to learn beyond what we know. We can hold others back by stopping them from learning and growing. Spiritual warfare involves all the choices that individuals can make and will make. The fight is about right and wrong. There may be some who are fighting to restrict knowledge. Some are fighting to help us gain more knowledge. The war could be about many superficial things. We could fight the war over what helps us. Everyone that wars have their own reasons. When the reasons for war is not analyzed, then the reason to wage war is usually selfish. Selfish reasons for war make someone stubborn and not willing to change. Selfless reasons for war are open to change and review. The many reasons to go to war are never good enough for me. The necessity to go to war may serve the purpose of the common greater good. The choice to go to war is a personal one. The reason for war can be selfish. We need to understand both spiritual wars and earthly conflicts. We can maintain our mental and emotional stability. Losing our stability means we can't make good choices or fight effectively. If I must go to war, I want to understand the reasons that are important for greater peace. If I understand the reasons for war are for selfish gain, then I find it hard to fight. If I do not understand God and his reasons for spiritual war, I cannot justify my own reasoning. I have tried to live with a sense of freedom and stillness. In the past, I did not understand the process and knowledge needed for living a better life. I now understand that seeking out better knowledge for better results is wisdom. We live and often must serve some type of war. War can manifest in earthly, spiritual, and personal forms. We must understand if the war is for selfless reasons or selfish reasons. When we understand the reason for any war, that is when we can do our best to win or not fight at all.